Very welcome, and
I think for the last 2 years
we're joined for this portion by Michael Kelleher from Ennistimon, and Michael, thanks for joining us. And there are 3 great tunes.
Thank you sir, for having us.
Well, you're saying you haven't played for a while.
The first one was Paddy Fahey's, and the second one was International, and the third one was Farewell to London.
Well, thanks to lovely, a great blast to start, and well done for playing all 3 of them, getting through it.
I don't know, I only scraped through them somewhere.
Well, yeah,
the practice, the bit of practice is very useful. We have nothing played now for 2 years and a couple of months short.
I know. Before that you would have played a lot.
Oh, well, we'd be playing away a few nights every week, like, alright, you know.
And how did it all start? You're an Ennistimon man, are you?
Yeah, John Bert, he'd be a brother of George's. They had a band up North Clare one time, the Corcoran Road they called it. It was way back in the time they were quarrying something. There was a chap, I think, from the north of Ireland that was in charge, or I forget his name now. But it went for a few years and it died down. John Bert then later on I think his father was in the original band, all right, Paddy Bert, the concertina player. But John Bert used to do the pictures in the old hall in this time. But he was a fiddle player as well. And he used to invite me in to play at his house with him the Monday nights, I remember.
What age were you then?
I'd be about 15 or 16. I was going into Leo Armstrong. He was teaching me to read the music.
Who?
Leo Armstrong. He played with the Army #1 band for 5 or 6 years.
And when you say he was teaching you the music, go on.
He played with John Madigan's, it was a modern band in his time, and he played with him for a good few years as well. He played with Mickey Hogan. He had another modern band in his time and later. But he played 5 or 6 instruments himself, like, you know, he played all the other instruments as well as the fiddle.
And as a 15-year-old, when you went to him for lessons, you were learning how to read music, but was he teaching you Irish music, trad music, or was he teaching
it was trad music.
So he
twisted in, like, you know.
So it was very unusual to read music from him.
You know. But he was very good at the teaching. He didn't play an awful lot now the trad himself. But he'd be playing all the modern stuff, like, but he was very well able to read it, and he could play it all right, no bother, you know. But 'tis in the modern lines of it more or less. But we were, 'twas the traditional stuff we were after. And there was another chap then only up the road from me. He started to learn to play as well after a while, Paddy Hagerty, so he started to come in as well. His uncle was Tom Hagerty. He played with Kilfenor.
I knew him, yeah. Right,
you know.
Right, yeah.
But we both learned to play. We both learned to play the music, and Paddy got the loan, or he got it from a chap, a friend of theirs, was O'Neill's book of music, and the guy that had it wasn't reading music or playing or anything, so he gave him the book, and we could get the tunes gradually out of that.
Isn't that interesting? Because what I've heard over, I know you've about 40 years. I've been watching you play for about 40 years, and I've known a lot of people that have been influenced by you. But most of them, anybody I know that's the likes of Joe Rynne and Christy Barry in that age group, they all say that they got this tune off you, they got that tune off you, because you obviously had to read the music. You were devouring all the tunes, but you were passing them on to your younger friends.
Well, this John Bert, as I said, he started up this Corkham Row Kelly band again, and he asked me to play with him. Himself, his father, Paddy Bert, Georgie Bert, and Michael Bert, that was 4 of them. Michael Bert played banjo mandolin. So that held going for a few years, and we played for dances in the Innistraiman Hall. We played around the county a bit, like, for maybe about 3 years, but it died down then, and it went all together. So the next thing was St. Michael's Band started up in this time, and Michael Murphy, James Murphy, and Michael was his son, so he started to play the fiddle, and after a few years he started to play the cornet as well. But started up the St. Michael's Kelly Band, so there was...
What year was this now, do you think?
In the 50s.
Oh, that long ago. Wow, yeah, great.
With the late 50s, kind of. But the St. Michael's Kelly Band held for about 3.5 or 4 years. We played for a good few dances around the country. That time the Kelly dancing was getting popular, like, you know. So that band faded out after about 4 years more.
How did you travel? How did the band travel to wherever you played?
Oh, they'd have there were taxis in Innistraiman that time. They used to drive us. There was one taxi fella, he was Paddy Curtin. He was a relation of the Michael Murphys, like. So they used to have him a lot, nearly.
And you'd all pile into one car?
Yeah, well, not all.
6 years.
Second taxi.
Well, okay,
there was a
very professional.
There was another chap, he was a taxi driver in his time, Victor Hines.
There you go. And that's 1960 now, 1959, more or less around that
well,
time.
Well, 50 years, 4, or yes, 5, 6, 7 and 8.
Wow, that's very interesting.
So anyway, St. Michael's died down around the 58 or 9, and 1960 came along, and Kitty, Linan and Tommy arrived down to the house and me to know they sat to play with him. So I said I would. So I went with them and I was with him for about 3 months. And the next thing I had these two fellas that were, well, I had them engaged for a good while, but they didn't get to come to do repairing the house for me and slating it and all that. There were two Shannons. So I was with Kate, they were busy, Kitty Linan, they were busy that time too, the old Kilfenora. So when the two Shannons came, I had to stop because I had to attend them every day and I couldn't be travelling at night time.
Did that annoy you? Did that break your heart?
So, well, it didn't kind of,
good.
But they played in the All Ireland that year, and it was, I think, the last year the old band won it actually.
Yeah.
But I'd have been with him but for what I was doing the house.
Obligations.
But I was only out of a very short time and the most of the house done when another man came looking for me. He was Raymond O'Neill.
Oh, I know, yeah.
The Golden Star.
Yeah.
So I went with him and I stayed with him 8 years.
Lovely.
And I got out of them then because we were getting a lot of nights in the pubs that were shutting up in a big way.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be travelling all the time because I had to be doing a little bit of work and going to creamery and all that.
Right, so you're a farmer?
Milking cows,
Yeah.
So I got out of them. But
and you stopped playing because the farm, you had to get up early in the morning, is that it?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
But the next
you never thought of going the other way?
The next thing was, anyways, that Kitty came back again for me.
Good.
To know would I play again with him. So I went back again with the old Kilfenora band and stayed with him until they finished playing in public altogether. That was 6 or 7 years more. So then when the young band came up later on, they came for me to know where I go to America with them to the Cascades. That's the present band now, present Kilfenora. So I did, and we had a great week in it. And that was okay, and about 2 years' time again, they were invited out to Milwaukee. So they asked me again would I go when I went to Milwaukee.
So the music's been there. When I knew that I was going to have a chat with you, there was one question I was dying to ask you, because when I see fiddle players and with fiddle styles, obviously everybody's unique, but you're the most unique fiddle player I know. Tell me how it happened that you developed that style where you'd hit with a really long, beautiful long bow and then come back to the short bows again.
Well, the funny thing, I had that from the start.
It's in your person, it just became from you yourself.
Leo Armstrong was advising me about that all right and the bow.
Well, you're very lucky to meet him because it's the most distinctive thing and it's the most beautiful. Would you maybe give us an example of a tune where you might use the long bow? Just play it out tune and we'll just for anybody who's listening and watching us, they see what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So when you were 12, 13 years old, just before anybody asked you to play with them, and you were learning off arm. Yeah. Did you start playing like that yourself?
Well,
or did somebody influence you on a fiddle?
That didn't really, but I'll tell you, my aunt was married to a chap down in a place called Morrison Mills. He was John Griffin, was his name, and they had a gramophone. And they had nearly every record. They had actually every record of Michael Coleman at the time. James Morrison and Paddy Killorn and Hugh Gillespie. So I had a great interest in that type of music, like, you know.
So you'd go down and you'd listen to the gramophone.
I used to the Sundays,
and pick up the
exactly,
fiddle.
yes, yeah. And any tune that was in it that might be in O'Neill's book, I'd be on to that then. And I'd go again to listen to the records another Sunday.
Yeah.
And if there might be little things.
I know.
There would be, like.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
There'd be extras.
Yeah.
So I'd be trying to get them in eventually.
Yeah.
And then Paddy Hegarty, his sister, was working down in Ennis, and she bought a new gramophone once Friday evening, brought it home. Mm-hmm. And every Friday evening she'd come back from work, she'd have to buy 2 or 3 new records. They were only
coming from America.
half a crown at the time,
Yeah.
something like that. So we were at that as well.
Right.
And he got into the hang of the very same, he was playing much the very same as myself.
Is that right?
Like, there was a greater strain of music in him, like, because it was handed down to him from years back. But my father used to play a bit all right in the flute.
I think there's a nice strain of music in you, Michael Kelleher. There's an old, I don't know, the fiddle players are all the great fiddle players are all recognisable, let's say.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And to this extent, even I remember Dennis Ryan from Offaly, you'd know when he was tuning up.
Oh God,
remember
yes.
Dennis? And
yes.
you know, but I'd often remember walking into O'Connor's pub, and you'd be only in the door on a summer's night, and just Kelleher's playing, you know, because you just hear that swing that nobody else has.
Yes,
I mean, nobody else has.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh yes.
Will you play another tune, because I tell you, that's what I think everybody's interested in is your approach to. Have you anything besides a jig or a reel?
Pardon?
Something besides a jig or a reel, just for interest's sake, or am I putting you on the spot there now?
Well, I was playing a lot of hornpipes, all right, in F and B flat, but I just can't think of any of them now. As I say, we've played nothing in the past 2 years.
And would you have an ordinary hornpipe you could play? Because
Sure.
Only if it suits.
What stuff we play generally, Joe?
Joe, will you come in and play? Will you come in, Joe? And because this is Joe.
Yes.
And we keep the thing going.
What about the Rights of Men and the Flying Tide?
What else?
The Flying Tide. 2 of them used to be together.
Right.
Just to let you know, we're being joined by the other great master of the fiddle from Ennis Diamond, Joe Rynne. You're very welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Any suggestion of now?
Yes, yeah.
Nice day.
Please do.
Nice day, where will I go?
We intended to do two separate things, but I think it makes much more sense to have you sitting there together, because Joe, tell us, just Joe Rynne from Ennis-Diamond. Thanks a million for coming.
You're welcome, no,
And-
not Owen.
Well, yeah, no problem at all. But tell us your impressions of Michael Kelleher, because you know him all your life.
Well, without Michael Kelleher, you wouldn't know me. Very, very many people wouldn't know me, because it was Michael who influenced me totally with the music. And he taught us to play, really, when we hadn't interest in music, but it was an outlet at the time to get somewhere. We had no youth clubs, we had no out the country, nothing, no social, only maybe a bit of hurling or football in a field on a Sunday, you know.
Yes.
So it was Michael who...
And how did that manifest? Was it in a house, or did you meet up, or was it formal, or was it...
Well, it was, at the time, my brother was living at home. He was a carpenter, and he was working with a local contractor, Jimmy Hinchy. And he was very interested in music. He was Tom.
Tom the box player.
Yes. So he started to play the accordion, and I think he wanted a companion. So there had been a fiddle at home in our house up in the attic for years. There's a lovely story attached to the fiddle, I might as well tell you. The fiddle was got by my uncle for his brother, who was my father. My father was born in 1916, and he was about 10 or 12, maybe 26, 28. He was the youngest of 10, my father, and this brother worked in Dublin, in a bar in Dublin. And he brought him back a present of a fiddle from Dublin, and the fiddle bow and case at the time was bought for 10 shillings. That would be 50 pence now. And strangely enough, that fiddle was in the house, and you played that fiddle for years, Michael.
I did, yeah.
I remember there was one stage Michael was playing, probably with one of the bands, maybe the Kilfenor or something, and I had been at Michael's house, or he was at my house or something, and the night before he was to go with the band, or maybe that evening, the fingerboard came off his fiddle.
That's right.
And he brought my fiddle, but I had another one at the time. And how many years did you play that, Michael? Well, you played it for 20 years.
I played it for about 2 years.
It must be 20 years, I'd say.
It was a very good instrument.
But anyway, it was. We used to go to Michael's house. Tom and myself used to go to Michael's house then 1 or 2 nights a week. And then, now your original question was, that I think I might have answered when I said that this was because of Michael. Anything I have, it's because of Michael, and I appreciate that so much. You know that it's he did so much for us without realising it.
I know.
He never realised it. He never read anything of it, and he was always there.
Yeah.
And he seemed to love it, because if he didn't, he wouldn't do it.
Of course, and what he spread was something. It feels to me like by helping you to be the musician you are, he also. It feels to me that music is very important to you as a sense of community. Am I wrong? I don't know you that well, but I feel that music and community are almost inseparable for you.
Yes, they would be. Both would be. Yes. But I wouldn't be so involved in the community, but for the music.
But yes.
You know,
but isn't it lovely that you can be so involved in helping and passing on what Michael's passed on to you through music, and that it's so.
The famous Christie. His tunes first tune,
yes.
He doesn't know how to read it from me.
That's right, yeah, because we were, Christy and myself were the same class.
Christy Barry,
the same class in Portland National School. Started the same day.
Every evening coming down the road walking from Portland School, I was hearing him playing the flute, and he'd be playing one of the other of the tunes.
Yeah.
He was very smart and clever too, and fast.
Of course, then there was as once.
His father and mother used to play a bit as well.
Yeah.
His mother actually is my wife's aunt. She's still alive. She's in the Ennis-Diamond Hospital. She's 98.
Was Christie's people from Ina, or were they all in this time?
Over towards the Mead Mill,
They were from the Master Mills area.
Both of them, his mother and father.
Barry and I was from Master Mills. And
Dremanur was the name of the townland where Packy came from.
That's right.
That was where
that's right.
his mother come from?
Oh, I forget the name.
In the same area.
Oh, yeah.
George Morris's
It's
Mills.
next to it anyway,
Yeah,
next
yeah.
to down, just further down.
So, yourself and Christy, was there anybody else around at the time that you were playing with?
Well, sure, Michael put a band of us together,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, we won in All Ireland.
That was good for Farnham.
Yeah, there was, at the time, Frank Custy was doing classes in Gurtbofarn, the National School. That's no longer a school now.
Where's that?
Again, 'tis between
Okay.
Aina, Morris's Mills and Innistymen, kind of, just
Yes,
over
yes,
to the
yes,
right.
yes.
We'll say, as you're coming from Aina to Innistymen, there's a cross there, Ballier.
Ballier, yeah.
If you go over there to the right, it's over on that road, over about a mile or mile and a half
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
that's where Gurtbofarn is. But Frank Custy was teaching in Gurtbofarn, and he was doing lots of classes, and he was teaching as well by day as a primary teacher.
Yeah.
So I think, did he give up Gurtbofarn now?
He did kind of, he packed up good for Farnham for a while anyway. And Frank Garvey was anxious to keep the music going, and like, so
You took over.
he arrived up to me and he asked me would I
Yes.
go down. So I did, I went down, I started.
And there was another little obstacle then. At the time, Michael didn't have a car.
That's right.
So Tom, my brother, had a car, and Tom would I'd be at home, go down to Michael Kelleher's, we'd pick up Christy Barry on the way, didn't pick up Michael
That's
Kelleher,
right.
and over to Gurtbofarn.
So there's the three of you, but I'll give you a few more names of who was around at that time in your for fun now, and not in bands as such.
Yes,
but maybe
yes.
if you were had a session started yet in pubs.
Well, not for us.
Yes,
not
that's what
for
I mean,
us.
yeah, yeah,
And I was born in 56. In 66, my uncle came home from America. He had been there for 40 years without him coming home. And before he went back, they had a party in my house for him. And that was really my first introduction to traditional music. There was a radio, I liked, but sure, the radio, the batteries.
But the excitement
Yes,
was there for that.
The excitement was there
emotion.
that night. And the three people who played up on the kitchen table that night was Michael Kelleher, Michael Sexton and Jimmy Ward.
Interesting.
And that night, that you played all night, I'd say it was bright in the morning.
It was, yeah.
And John, tell me about Jimmy Ward. He was a banjo player, which was very unusual.
Well,
at
he
the
was a
time.
banjo player for the finish, but he was a flute player.
He was a flute player at that time.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. So he was playing the flute.
He was from Kinfenora
Yeah.
originally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
He was.
Because I was interested in what his banjo playing would have sounded like with
Within
Michael
mid-tone
and
finish.
but it was a
But it was heaven to me anyway.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And you were so you're all of a sudden it's become much more than something you're doing. It's actually
This was before the fiddle was introduced from Detic or
yeah.
anything that way, you know. But I always remember I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't sleep the next night.
Isn't that
Because
great?
music was
You were dying to get it
gone around inside my head.
Yeah.
Just it was
That was the
It
moment.
was the same as if that was the moment. as
Will you
well.
play a tune on your own, Joe? And
Don't be what he has been to.
Yeah, but like Michael, to think of them now is.
this is lovely. Thanks a million. This is great. Really enjoyable. It was lovely.
I'll play this little tune. I mentioned my father, the fiddle. That's how I started. That's because the fiddle was there. You wouldn't be buying instruments that time. And that time he learned to play a couple of tunes, and he was going to another man. His name was Frank Rynne, back in Clonanaha, back towards the Clonanaha, between May and Middletown and back that side. And he had only a couple of tunes learned when his mother died. And as you know, that time it was different to now. Once his mother died, the fiddle had to be put away for
A year.
a year. But when the year was up, he didn't take it up again. So this is one tune when the fiddle was taken out in, when I was starting to play, strings had to be put in it. Another job for Michael Kelleher, of course, and to do what a bow had to be got for it, and Michael rehearsed the bow and all that and got me on the road. But this is one tune I used to hear him at, and it always stuck in my head. I think it's The Walls of Liscarroll. that was the tune, and any time he'd ever take out the fiddle, that was the few notes that he'd play, you know.
There's a great drive to that, Michael, isn't there? There's a great rhythm in that music.
Another one he used to play it in was
lovely.
Tidy Gelling, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, tidy Gelling sauce.
So Joe, you both play, and you can hear the oldness. The you know, all of a sudden you become the elderly. Not elderly is the wrong word. But
well, thanks be to God that we have reached that stage.
No, but you know what I mean. That when you were 20, and when you were 20, you looked up to maybe Bobby Casey, Joe Ryan, and John Kelly, and those lads, and they had a certain sound. And you might be the last guys to have that sound.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Joe Ryan, sure, he lived kind of down line of.
He did, yes, he did.
Well,
yes.
I often had a lot of tunes with Joe. I was coming to, do you know the Ryan's Cottage up there?
I do, yes, and Wafer was very good.
Yeah, that's right,
yes,
that's right.
Yes.
Sure.
There was a shop there one
it was
time.
There. I learned to play a few tunes on the flute first from the boss man at home, my father.
Yes.
And I used to go up to Ryan's Cottage. I used to be dancing every night. And John Duggan, that married Mary Hogan over the road from me, he was a fiddle player. Yeah. And he was from Morrison's Mills originally. But he was mad for the bit of dancing and the music as well. But I used to go up with him and we'd be down together. But this particular night we were coming home walking, and we used to bring no bikes or anything like that. So he said to me, would you be interested, he said, in learning to play a fiddle? Well, I don't know, I said I might, sure. Well, I'm going to Limerick, he said, in the morning, and if you have any interest in it, I'll have a look and I might get you one. Oh, grand, I said, we'll come over tomorrow night anyway, he says. So I did. And when I was going down into the street, I had this music going on. Oh my God, I said to myself before I went in, I suppose we should have something odd. So he had this fiddle and he showed it to me after buying it. And a fiver it cost.
That was dear.
£5. Well, talking about Desmond Care again, the time that we went to England with the Golden Star band, Raymond and Hull band. We were down in London for a couple of days, sure, and myself and Des went into this big music shop this particular day anyway, and there was sure banjos and fiddles and rhythm in it. So I took one anyway, there was some patterns that I played a few tunes, so Des took this banjo and we started playing, and not so nice while. And Des liked this banjo tune that was in it, but I think it was fairly dear. But anyway, the chap that was in charge when we were about to go, he said to me, don't go a minute, he says, I have a violin up here, you'll play a tune before you go. So he took it down and he gave it to me. And I played a couple of tunes. Christ, it was a beautiful instrument. And I said to him like that, what kind of money isn't that? Oh, it's only 4,500, he said. That time, that was in the 60s.
Yeah, two houses for it.
That was big money that time.
Huge.
When I think of my £5 fiddle,
yes.
4,500, but it was something else, all right.
Amazing.
Beautiful instrument.
Yeah.
But
you're enjoying playing as much as ever, Michael, are you?
That international days I played around, it was Sean Maguire that gave me that.
Yes. Sure, you had that taught all of us, but sure we wouldn't
I remember I remember one night that he was down below Milton. What's that pub that was down the road?
Crosses of Venom.
Crosses of Venom, that's right. So.
Sure, you brought me, I'd say there. You brought me to the Green Grove where Sean Maguire was playing anyway.
Well, this particular night anyway, he was only after playing in the radio a couple of weeks before that, and he played international for the first time I heard it. So I was asking him about it. Oh, look at that fucking tune he said in 2 days' time. I sent it up to it. He recites that way, you know, for So, not alone had I the tune in a couple of days' time, but 6 more along at it. B flats and the different.
He sent them to you?
Had?
Yeah. Maguire sent them down to you?
He sent it down.
On a cassette tape or something?
He
brought them out.
He wrote them out. Man for me to write music.
So he wrote out tunes for you and posted them down to you?
Exactly,
And
yes.
out of the goodness of his heart, like?
Yes.
Wasn't that lovely?
Oh, it was.
That's a big thing, like.
Oh, it was. Oh, sure. Any time he came around after that he was playing, first thing he was calling me up after a while, you have to give me a break. Says, well, I don't mind, I said, Sean, but if I go play on your fiddle, I could put out a tune. Oh, he said, if you don't want to play my fiddle, you play Josephine's. That was Josephine Keegan at the time. So she had a beautiful instrument as well. I remember outside Innis there one night.
Green Grove it was at the time.
Right.
I was there, I was, yes.
I done 20 minutes for him anyway,
yes.
More.
And I remember after that night when it was over, Christy Barry went out to Tim Whistle and Josephine Keegan backed him.
Oh, God knows, yes.
And I don't know who taped it, but it was a fine recording. He played tune after tune.
Oh, God, yes.
A tune, another tune.
Oh, he was playing.
Back into once he had played already.
Yes, no, he
went on for
he was playing
the night.
He was playing like hell that
he
time.
Was, in the whistle.
Well, sure, his father, Parky, he was playing a few tunes on the fiddle. Not many, no, but he was playing. Whatever he played well. He was a great dancer.
Oh, great dancer.
Great sit dancer, like he was a deadly man for time. And the mother, sure, she was playing a little bit as well. And everything she played was very accurate, like too. So the strain of the music was in him from the start, like, you know.
Well, I'll tell you a little story now about, we're doing more talking about Christy now than we are about ourselves.
That's all right.
I'm sure you're happy with that too,
well,
because he was backed about.
I'm very happy to hear you speak, because along with your music, your way of speaking is very important, and I really appreciate it, because again, these things are changing very fast in life, but I'm not interrupting your story now. But your style of music and your style of putting words together are something that I find very interesting, because I don't take it for granted anymore. Do you know what I mean? When you hear somebody speaking like that, because it's so rare now.
Sure, we take ourselves for granted, naturally enough, sure.
But anybody under 40 or it's very hard to get that strong accent anymore, and it's an awful pity. But go on, tell us about Christy Barry, who was a great accent himself.
It was actually the morning that Chris Throney had died. Michael would have been great friends, we'd all have been great friends with him, but I had got the news early that morning, and before it would be publicly announced, I said, I must go up as far as Michael Kelleher, and I just tell him, you know. And I went up to Michael and talked to him, sure, and we had our discussion. And on my way down home, then I was passing by Christy's home house, and Christy had spent the night with his mother. She was 96 that time now.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And COVID was raging at the time. And I said, asked Christy how was he, and he says, come in, sure, come in, don't you know? And I can't. I said, come in, don't you know? No. So I went in anyway, just to as far as the door, and as soon as his mother saw me, sure, she put out her hand to shake hands. So then I had to go in, and I had to explain when I can't shake hands, but you know, we had a chat anyway, and I sat down, and we had a mighty chat. And Christy was saying, we must have a tune. There was ages since we had a tune, and there was ages and ages. And I just thought there and then, I said, have you the tin whistle or the flute with you? He says, no, I haven't. Because if we're playing any tune, 'tis here we'll play it for this woman, because she'd really appreciate it. So we arranged that anyway. He was there again that night, and the following night, that night he'd bring the flute with him. And I said, well, I'll be up in the morning at 10:30, the home help will be gone, and she'll have her breakfast and everything, will be sitting down the same as this morning. And I went up, I brought the fiddle, and when I arrived in anyway, first thing I saw when I went in above on the table, the flute was out and it oiled and all ready, because I had even brought a tin whistle with me, because I said he'll surely forget it, you know. But we sat down anyway, and we talked, I suppose, for 3 hours, and we played tunes, and we had different jigs played, the same as Michael and myself, we thinking of handy little tunes and playing away and talking and had tea. And after ages anyway, she says, why don't you play a reel? You know, oh, we can, we says anyway. And I just sounded like this now. God, she says, my favourite tune, the Trip to Durham.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realise it was the Trip to Durham,
Yeah.
which would be the first couple of notes.
Yes, sure, yes.
And imagine at that age, this is only a couple of notes of a tune, and she was able to associate it with a tune. And with, with
the music is the last thing to go sometimes.
well, yeah, it is. She has held great now. She's a lovely woman, lovely woman. But then sure I had great times then, all the years spent in Ina and the Sunday nights, when Joseph and Michael Kelleher and Peter O'Loughlin and Tom Eustace and Paddy Murphy were there, and that was the cream of. And then they'd love to see the
I done 12 years on the Sunday nights.
Sunday nights, yeah.
6 men would stand up on the floor with their caps, and they'd be waiting for the music to start, and when the music is starting, they'd only, how they'd ask women is, just call out, and they'd dance sets of 6, which was kind of rare.
Yeah.
I never saw danced any place else, but that was to spare, otherwise there would be only 8 people dancing, but this way there was 12 that was engaged in it all the time.
4 twos, generally.
And that was great. It was Max, Willie Max pub that time.
Yeah, that's right.
And in Garvey's after.
Yeah.
And Joe, you've been through all that, and Michael's been through all that, and it's been really natural. It's different now, is it? But you have a legacy as well, because you've got nephews, you've daughter, you've great music coming behind you. And it goes on and it travels on. It must make you feel okay.
I'd be delighted that they are playing, of course. You'd always, when your children would be small, you'd love, I love if they were able to play at some stage.
Yes.
But you have to be really, really careful as well, because you can turn them off.
Well, they have to find their own music. Besides the fact that they know the tunes, they have to find their own music.
All Joe's family are great musicians.
Yes.
They're very, very good.
The difference from what I hear now, and I taught music then for a good while. I taught in Ina and I taught in Kilrush, Knockera, different places. I was doing classes. But when my own children came along, as soon as they came to the age of learning to play, I gave it up, because I couldn't teach my own, because I wasn't giving them fair play. If there was Declan was the oldest at the time, he'd been in the class. And we'd have gone through the tune at home maybe, and he'd have a fair idea of it, and we'd go into the class then, and I wouldn't ask him to play in the class at all.
I know,
And then somebody maybe else would be playing, and they mightn't have it as good as him, and I'd be praising him, and I'd never praise him.
I know.
Which was a thing that I just realised, and I'm glad I gave it up.
Yes.
Then, for that reason.
Neither way is right.
No.
and
then
still,
the first two of them, I had quarter size fiddle, I had a half size, I took everything laid on for them. And none of them took to a fiddle, but Declan went at the whistle and the flute, Aidan went at a concertina, and I never mentioned an instrument to Anne-Marie, and then she took up the fiddle, because I didn't mention it, I feel. If I had forced it on her, she probably wouldn't be doing it at all.
I got she's able to use it.
Hasn't it been amazing for the younger? I mean, you guys had a great time.
We had a great time, yes.
But now the possibilities are endless to where you can go with the music and socialise, and especially now that this virus is gone, that people can meet up again, because the music is a great social activity, and you keep that going in the Chakyo in Ennistein and Dustin for visitors as well.
Summer, yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
We're here at Oliver O'Connell's house, and Oliver keeps me informed of how when he goes up there regularly to visit you.
That's right, a great support for them.
We're great supporters, right, and definitely appreciate his hospitality here and for some of the other videos we've made. That's something you've been doing for a long time. The Chuck, is that a cultist?
That is a cultist thing, yeah. It's just sure that Tommy White used to be the Faratee years ago, and then Tommy got Parkinson's. To keep it going, someone had to do something,
Well, this was the best man that ever was Faratee in it, because he knew them all around the country, everywhere. Anyone who was able to sing or anyone who could play a tune, he was getting them all to do a session every night that they'd be there. And there's one thing, and I have said it several times, that with himself and Johnny Maloney and Gerard McDonough gets out, that'll be the finish.
There's always someone to take over.
They won't be able to mix with the crowd or get onto them as well as she did. No.
Then sure, I spent years with Peter Griffin in the fourth.
That's right, sure, yeah.
That was a major.
You would have been in the barn in Kilfenora for
And Kilfenora, sure, but like that, cruises all over the world, Greece, Italy.
When his brother Andy had the Kincora, sure, they used
Andy
to come
Griffin,
down for
yes.
me every September, myself and Peter used to play, sure, nearly every night of the week for that time.
That's a different music that for that set dance.
Of course,
it's
it is, yeah.
It's gone back a long time now.
Well, thanks a million for the chat and for coming up from Ennis time and up to the heart of the Burren here. Is it Tubber, I think we're in, is it? But maybe you'd like to finish with a...
There's one other place we must mention, Michael, and that's Fahey's in Ennistown.
Oh, that's right.
Phil's place. It was
Friday
just,
nights.
But I don't know where I could talk for Ireland.
That kept us involved in music for years and years.
That's right, yeah.
Friday nights.
The 20 years that he had the pub, weren't we?
We were there on the Friday nights, I'd say. And again, it was Michael went in there and I went in to join him and the Rynnes, Anne Rynne and Mary Rynne and Sean Rynne. And
that's right.
There was endless amount of musicians coming there every night. Yeah, there was hardly a night, but there'd be a stray musician, we'd say. And Phil Fahey, the Faheys treated them with the greatest respect, you know.
And this time is a town of characters, isn't it?
Oh, sure,
I mean, really it is. Yes. There's nowhere quite like it. But I always found, no matter how wild things got, the respect for the music was completely, there was always a great respect for the music.
Yes, well, of course, they had, in the time, opera was a big thing in Ennistown.
Yes,
Wouldn't
right,
it have been, Michael, there was more the opera in Ennistown. But like Phil Fahey, what he did, and what he went out for the Rynnes and then and brought him in when they had the way coming in, Anne and Mary when they were young and Sean, their father.
That's right.
Like he couldn't do enough for you, really.
Yes.
Oh, he was great that time. He was in good health.
And sure, Nagels in Kilfenora, we did a good few years in the Sunday nights.
Well, sure, after Ina.
That's right, yeah.
When Garvey took Ina over, we were playing sure away in it for a time, but the padder, whatever about this tax and all that, he figured out that he was paying each of us €60 a night. That time for the whole thing was only €60. We were paying out that much altogether. I remember I had to go down to the tax office in Limerick. We all had. But Peter O'Rourke came up to the house anyway, and he gave him the greatest doom that he ever got in his lifetime. He cut him asunder, but that finished us completely with Garvey's. But I was only out of Garvey's one Sunday night actually, when Nagel and Kilfenora, they heard about it that we had left, and they came down looking for me to go up to play. And so I went up and I stayed there that 10 or 12 years ago. And any night that we were playing with a band, any Sunday night. But that was that. But that's how we left Garvey's anyway.
Well, we'll have to put an end to it at some stage. Will you finish up with reels?
We will.
And can I just say before, just shake your hands and thank you so much for coming. And I really appreciate it. It's been a lovely chat. And I think it's.
I suppose there'll be no days tonight.
I don't know whether days will come or not. He's coming. He might.
The session will go on, but we'll turn off the cameras. Thanks very much, Ben.
We won't mind the legislation because I can. What about Dr. Gilbert? And the one after?
Right.
Yes. Dr. Gilbert. That's it.